let loose at the club, thinking my husband wouldn't mind, but now he won't speak to me.
Sometimes us women tend to think that we are superior or we have dominated our partners just because we are earning more than them, or we are doing a better job than them. We tend to forget our roles as women in our partners' lives and act like we were the one wearing pants in marriage or relationships. My husband was nonchalant as ever. At least that's what I had thought. I thought I had the upper hand in our marriage, but what he did to me for my small mistake, it would be hard to forget. I got off my high horse quickly. Everything just went downhill for me. I guess karma never forgets to visit the wrongdoers, right? Jake, my husband, male 36, and I, female 36, started dating 7 years ago. We were 29 years old at that time. We had gone to a church camp that took place in Cranmore Hall, East Cranmore, Shepton Mallet, UK. While we had met during church camps a few times, we would speak here and there, but we were not close. We started getting close during a summer church camp. We would spend more time together and even share our food. Jake was a very funny guy. He was a very calm person and relaxed. We dated for a couple of months through telephonically and our twice-a-month meeting plan. It was very hard having to not see your partner whenever we wanted to. We only communicated through social media and phone calls. The following year, he said to me that he was going to the University of London, which was heartbreaking for me. The way he was so chilled when I told him my fears of him going to UL, University of London, but he was just nonchalant about the whole situation. He proposed before he went to university. We got married when he was still doing his internship. I was the happiest woman on earth. We moved to our new home 2 months after we got married. We were living the life of those who only dream about it. My husband was not a romantic guy. He was just boring, but I loved him like that. I had my own law firm, which was dealing with family matters. I loved my work so much, but it somehow became a weapon to destroy me. As time passed, our relationship started being more about Jake and not me. He was very nonchalant when it came to my feelings. Staying with him was no longer fun, and our intimate moments were no longer the same. Jake didn't care about anything rather than himself. Jake became a self-centered person who had an ego for days. I remember when I first had to visit him at work. Well, more like I was missing some action, and there's a phrase that says, "It's a lot more nicer when done in the office, especially on top of the office table." So I took those words and went to see my hubby only to be surprised. I found him busy trying to push a girl who was busy seducing him, but his Johnson was standing like a stretch tent. I couldn't believe it, I confronted him about it, and guess what he said? He just pinned everything on me. He told me that I was pranking him and I had bought the underwear to pin it on him. The guy didn't even try to apologize. Instead, he blamed me for everything. When I asked him to put his ego aside and learn to take responsibility for his actions, he told me that he won't apologize for something he never did and didn't even know about. Every time when we would argue, he would always find a way to put blame on me and not apologize when he's wrong. I would apologize, just for the sake of maintaining peace between us. I loved Jake a lot, but his ego was somehow getting to me to a point that I would sometimes think of getting out of the relationship. But I would rethink my decision because I loved him so much. And I had never seen myself with anyone else except for him, but the way he was doing things made me wonder if being consistent in this relationship was worth my happiness. I was no longer happy with Jake. My friends would advise me to get out of the relationship and find someone better. Maybe I should have listened to them earlier. I was working as a family attorney for a couple of years until I started my own law firm and a construction company on the side. Jake was working in a bank as a chartered accountant, and things started changing when my businesses started growing. Well, more like I changed, I became this lady with a big ego. I forgot that before my businesses started being a thing, Jake was there for me all the way. Even though he was a bit of an ass with his nonchalant ego, but he supported me through it all. I started making my own things despite Jake's approval. I was too big for my own boot. I was making my own rules and living my own life like I was not married. So one day I decided to go to a club with my girls. I know that they didn't like Jake for their own reasons. Ever since Jake and I started dating, my friends were just against our relationship. So I resorted to spending time with my girls most of the time, going out, having a few drinks, and socializing. Well, I was not a person who liked socializing, but the more I went out with the girls, I got introduced to the alcohol kind of fun. I learned to socialize with strangers. If my husband wasn't the ass that he was most of the time, I wouldn't have time to even go out and socialize with strangers because he would be there with me, What I was doing to Jake felt like I was paying back for all the times that he would act like a god in my life and trying to control my life. One of my girls was going to have a birthday party at one of the clubs. Obviously, I was invited. I needed to go out and remove my mind from what had been going on that week, so it was going to be a great distress treat for me. The girl that I was friends with once called me and told me that she was hosting her birthday party at the club that weekend, so I was like, why not? She then told me to bring a +1 because everyone would be bringing their partners. You know, I never thought much about who held the power in my marriage. I always assumed it was me. I was the one with a successful career, the one who made all the decisions, the one who seemed to have everything under control. My husband Jake was more laid back, more easygoing. He had his hobbies and his friends, but when it came down to it, it was me who wore the pants in our relationship. At least that's what I thought. It was a Friday night, and Mark and I had decided to go out to a club with some friends. I had picked out my outfit carefully, wanting to look my best, wanting to show off to everyone around me. Mark, as usual, just grabbed the first thing he saw in his closet and threw it on. As we danced and drank and laughed with our friends, I found myself feeling a sense of power and control. I was the one leading the conversation, the one making decisions about what drinks to order, the one setting the pace for the night. But then I made a small mistake. I caught Jake's eye as I was dancing with a group of our friends, and I could see that he looked a little bored. Without thinking, I turned to him and said, "Why don't you go grab us some more drinks, babe?" I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just asking him to do something simple, something that would benefit both of us. But as I watched him walk away to the bar, I started to feel a sense of unease creeping into my chest. When he returned with our drinks, he handed me mine with a smile, but there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. It was a mixture of amusement and something else, something that made me feel like he knew something that I didn't. So I excused myself and told Jake that I was going to the ladies' room. I was a bit tipsy. Well, not a bit, but I was sloshed. When I was on my way to the ladies' room, I bumped into this handsome fella. I found out that he was actually a fan of my work. We talked and got to know each other. He introduced himself as David. The young man was very attractive. David and I kissed. We were tipsy from the alcohol we had drank since we had moved our conversation to the bar area. I had even forgotten that I was going with my husband at that party, and everyone from the group that we were with, they were minding their own business. Things escalated to a point that we ended up being intimate. We went to the men's restroom and did it in one of the toilet rooms. I know it was wrong of me, but I couldn't help it. I mean, Jake was no longer doing it the way he was doing it before. It was like his ego and nonchalant behavior had somehow gotten into his head, and it was making him look like a crazy person or a person with bipolar disorder. He was very calm, but when he got angry, even the house would be on fire. So I would always try by all means to keep the peace between us. On the other hand, David was making me feel completely happy, and he knew how to take responsibility for his actions. David knew how to apologize when he was wrong and would make sure that he takes the blame as it is. I didn't know that in my relationship with Jake, the last time Jake had uttered the word "I'm sorry." Instead of doing that, he would either deny or shift the blame on me or someone else. He didn't have the guts to say "I'm sorry." Spending time with David made me feel at ease. I felt a sense of belonging, and he understood me and my needs. I know I shouldn't have fallen for a person I called a friend, but I couldn't help it. David had once confessed his love for me before, but I was so much in love with Jake, so I kept rejecting him and told him that I didn't see him in that manner. But I saw him as a brother and a best friend that I had ever had since we grew up together. But I guess the phrase that says "marry your best friend" was somehow true. Well, because I never really believed in such phrases. I only believed in my heart that if it loves someone, we can be in love with them or even marry them. Jake asked where I was coming from. Obviously, I lied and said I was at a friend's house, and besides, I was old enough to go wherever I wanted to go without anyone's permission. He just looked at me and said, "Okay." Then he told me to wear something nice because we were going to a club. I tried to protest, but he was insisting that we go to the club just to unwind because we are both always busy with work. I knew that I was not going to win with him, so I obliged and went to prepare for the night ahead. We went to a club with some friends. I had a few too many drinks and my inhibitions were lowered. I started dancing with a stranger, a handsome and charming man who knew all the right moves. Jake tried to intervene, but I brushed him off, thinking I was in control. But as the night wore on, I realized I had made a mistake. The stranger was not who I thought he was, and I found myself in a compromising position. Michael saw the whole thing and was furious. I tried to downplay it, to tell him it was no big deal, but he was having none of it. For the first time in our marriage, he stood up to me. Well, not the first time, but it was the first time since I started getting more money than him and my businesses were booming, his anger and hurt palpable. "You humiliated me," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You disrespected me in front of our friends, in front of strangers. I can't take it anymore." I was taken aback. I had never seen Jake like this before. I realized too late that I had underestimated him. that he was not the pushover I thought he was. The days that followed were tense and uncomfortable. Jake and I barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was only to argue. I tried to apologize, to explain that I had made a mistake, but he wasn't having it. "You've been walking all over me for years," he said, his voice cold and detached. "You've been treating me like a doormat ever since you've been the *T, and your business started booming. You have changed to a point that you even forgot who you are. You are driven by arrogance and money. Now you think that you are all that, and I'm sick of it." I was taken aback by his words. I had never intended to hurt him, to make him feel small. But as I looked back on our relationship, I realized that he was right. I had been dominating him, controlling him, and I hadn't even realized it. Jake's nonchalant demeanor shattered, and he expressed his pain and anger to me. He felt betrayed and humiliated. I apologized profusely and begged for his forgiveness, but Jake couldn't bring himself to forgive me. He broke up with me and moved out of our apartment, which I think was a bit too much. He shouldn't have moved out, you know. I was heartbroken and filled with regret. I realized thinking that I was dominant more than my husband had been a huge mistake. One day, Jake came home from work early. He had a strange look in his eye, a look that made me feel uneasy. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I've been thinking about how you've treated me all these years, and I've come to a realization." "What's that?" I asked, my heart racing. "I'm not going to take it anymore," he said, his eyes glinting with fierce determination. "I'm going to stand up for myself, even if it means standing up to you." He said a lot of things, but what caught my attention was when he told me that he knew about David and I. He laughed and told me that he couldn't believe that I had been timing him and I had gone against my wedding vows. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had never seen Jake like this before. He had been controlling and what's not before, but he had never been this, I don't know what I can say, but it wasn't my Jake, and it scared me. I realized too late that I had underestimated him, that he was not the weak and submissive partner I had thought he was. The only thing I wanted to do was to pay back all those times that he was controlling me, but I guess everything backfires if you are not careful. Jake's words hung in the air, a challenge and a warning. I felt a surge of anger and defensiveness, but I tried to keep my cool. I knew I had to tread carefully to avoid making things worse. "Jake, let's talk about this," I said, trying to sound calm and reasonable. "I know I've made mistakes and I'm sorry, but let's not throw away our marriage over one mistake." Jake laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. "One mistake?" he repeated. "You've been making mistakes for years and I've been covering for you, but not anymore." He turned and walked away, leaving me feeling shocked and scared. I realized that I had underestimated the depth of his hurt and anger. The days that followed were tense and uncomfortable. Jake and I barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was only to argue. I tried to reach out to him, to apologize and make amends, but he shut me down at every turn. I was starting to realize that I had lost control of our relationship. Jake was no longer the submissive partner I had thought he was, and it scared me. One night I came home from work to find that Jake had changed the locks. I was locked out of our house, and he refused to let me in. "What's going on?" I demanded, pounding on the door. "Let me in." "I'm taking back control," Jake said, his voice cold and detached. "You've had your chance to dominate me, and now it's my turn." I was shocked and scared. I had never intended for things to go this far. I was stunned. I had never thought that Jake would take such drastic measures. I realized too late that I had pushed him too far, and now he was fighting back. I tried to reason with him, to convince him to let me in, but he refused. I was left standing on the porch, feeling helpless and defeated. As the night wore on, I realized that I had no choice but to leave. I went to a hotel, feeling lost and alone. The next day, I tried to contact Jake, but he ignored my calls and messages. I was starting to realize that I had lost him, that he was no longer the man I thought I knew. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I was forced to move on, to start a new life without Jake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a grave mistake, that I had underestimated the man I loved. One day I received a package in the mail. Inside I found a note from Jake. "You thought you dominated me," it read. "But I was just biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. You should have treated me with respect, with love. Now it's too late." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that Jake had been planning his revenge all along. I was shocked and devastated by Jake's note. I had never intended to hurt him, to dominate him. I had thought I was in control, but really I was the one who had been blind. I tried to contact Jake again, to apologize and make amends, but he was gone. He had moved on, started a new life without me. As I was busy scrolling through my phone, going through social media, there was something that had caught my attention. When I saw Jake's Facebook post and Instagram, I saw that he had posted some girl but hid her face and wrote, "The only one who would never betray me and take my love for granted" on his caption. That truly broke my heart. I mean, how he could move on a few weeks after he divorced me. Isn't he supposed to be healing before moving on? A lot was ringing in my head. I had thought Jake was an honest guy. So how come he had moved on a few weeks after our breakup and even posted her on social media? Was I a fool this whole time? I kept asking myself if she was the girl that had left underwear at his apartment once upon a time, and when I asked about it, he changed everything and put the blame on me, saying that I was pranking him. Why does it still hurt so much to see that the person I had spent 5 years with had replaced me within the blink of an eye? The way he was doing things, it was like he wanted to make me jealous or see my reaction towards the situation. While on the other hand, I had got an engagement party invitation from David. I knew there and then that my life was doomed. Karma had got my address very quickly. It's sometimes heartbreaking how unfair life is. I mean, I cheated on Jake with David, while David also cheated on his girlfriend, but I was the only one feeling the wrath of the abomination. David lived his happy life with his partner while mine was falling apart. During that time, I was still in pain and trying to go through everything, like trying to deal with the best way I knew how. So as I was keeping myself busy by going through social media, I logged onto Twitter, and guess what I saw? A moment of me and David at his flat doing the shameful act. I was drunk, so I don't really remember some events that took place, but when I saw the video, my world came crumbling down. I tried checking who had posted it, but the person had created a fake account to tarnish my image and reputation. I suspected David for the video, but when I would come to think of it, I told myself that David valued our friendship so much for him to humiliate me like that. My mind also drifted to Jake. I mean, he was the only person that I had cheated on, and he managed to move on a few days after our breakup. I had thought that maybe he was doing that to spite me. I mean, he managed to gloat and post his new girlfriend on social media, knowing very well that I would see the posts. Only a hurting heart would take a drastic decision like that. Another thing I didn't know was that David's flat had cameras, and he didn't even bother to notify me about them. Or maybe it was his plan, David's, to record everything that we were doing in his flat so that he would post it on Twitter. My mind was all over. I didn't even know who to blame and who to suspect, because I even thought of David's girlfriend, thinking maybe she had bugged the camera in David's flat for some reason, and she decided to create a fake account to demonize my dignity and image. That one really took away all my surviving energy and left me empty. I then decided to just switch off my phone and put it in a place where I knew I wouldn't find it while I was going through the phase. And come to think of it, David had once confessed his undying love for me, asking me to give him a chance in my life and how much he won't disappoint me. I rejected his request and confession, and now he has the nerve to sleep with me, then gloat about his relationship and engagement while my relationship had fallen apart. How unfair was that, mind you? I had developed some little feelings for David during all the times that I had been spending with him. Was it David's part of the plan to invite me to chill out, make me drunk, and then sleep with me? I felt truly violated about the video, mind you. David's face was not even showing, only me and the action that took place. I tried watching the video to try and remind myself what had really gone down that night, because the only thing I remembered was David and myself leaving the party and going to his flat to continue our mini party. As friends, of course, we got there and watched a movie while drinking. One minute we were laughing, doing crazy things, then another minute we were kissing. What happened next became blurry. It was like I was brainwashed. I felt like I was losing my mind and my sanity. I was slowly losing myself to a point that I would actually sleep with a bottle of gin to numb the pain and forget everything for a few hours. I wished to just sleep and never wake up when everything was over and I had healed. It was really a lot to take in. I didn't know that cheating on my nonchalant boyfriend would actually backfire this hard. I must admit that karma had hit me where it was hurting the mist. It was like salt was poured on a bleeding cut. That's how much hurt I was feeling. I spent, I think, 2 weeks, if not more, in the apartment. My friends even tried to call me, but I switched off my phone. I just disappeared from everything, my social life, social media, and even going out. I just stayed in the house and locked all the doors so that people would think there was no one in the house. My friends came over, they kept knocking and calling my name, but I ignored them until they decided to go. Weeks later, I had seen myself drowning in sorrows that I didn't even know who would come and rescue me. I felt like my soul was slowly leaving my body, the way things were. It was hard to handle all alone. So when I had gathered a little strength, I decided to call Jake and ask him about the video that was posted on social media. And to my surprise, he answered my call. I didn't even think he would because of how rough our breakup was. I thought he was still angry at me somehow. When he answered the call, he answered by saying, "I know you want to ask me about the video of you having fun with your so-called friend." My mouth went dry in an instant and got tongue-tied. When I recovered from what he had said, I asked him if he was the one who posted it and where he got the video. He just told me that, "You can never hurt a loving heart and think everything will be well. Karma always has a home to visit, and I guess it visited your address sooner." I couldn't believe it. I mean, he didn't confirm my speculations and he didn't even deny them, so my mind was suspecting him. I thought he loved me, but I guess I was wrong. Meaning the whole 5 years that we had spent together meant nothing to him. It was truly heartbreaking and depressing. Yes, I had fallen for what David was offering me that I had been missing in my relationship with Jake, but my heart didn't love him. I loved Jake, and my actions didn't only cost me a relationship and the person I loved, but I had also lost my self-respect. I lost the person who loved me for me and respected our relationship. Jake and I had goals and dreams for our relationship, and I guess all those dreams and goals went down the drain the day I committed abomination and betrayed Jake. I vowed to learn from my mistake and to never cheat on anyone again or try to dominate someone or my partner. I had realized that true love and respect are built on trust and fidelity. So I spent the next few months working on myself, trying to heal from the pain I had caused Jake and myself. Eventually, I met someone new who appreciated me for who I was. I had broken all my connections, David, after what we had done. I was no longer looking at him the same. When I looked at him, I would only see the betrayal that I had done to Jake, so I thought we were better off apart. I learned that it is important to be with someone who values and respects you, and that cheating is never the answer to problems in a relationship. But I had only one problem that I couldn't even move on from. I looked for Jake and Brandon, my current boyfriend. In some way, I'm still expecting him to change on me, just like how Jake did, and I acted like I was dominant to him. I lack trust. Not that I do not trust Brandon, but I am somehow insecure. I know that he has female friends and they respect our relationship, but I just can't bring myself to trust any of them. I came back to my senses when Brandon broke up with me, saying that our relationship was not what he thought it would be. To tell the truth, I got into a relationship with Brandon because I wanted to forget about Jake or David. I made the poor guy a rebound to escape the depressing state that I was in. I realized too late that I was still hung onto the past, so I needed to completely heal from everything. Try to find myself before I even think of moving on and be in a relationship. I was left alone, forced to confront the damage I had done. I realized too late that I had been selfish, arrogant, and cruel. I had destroyed the man I loved, and now he was gone. I spent months in a funk, unable to eat, sleep, or function. I had lost the love of my life, and it was all my fault. But as the months went by, I started to heal. I started to see a therapist, to work through my issues and my mistakes. I started to learn about healthy relationships, about mutual respect and love. And then one day I saw Jake. He was with his new woman, a woman who loved and respected him for who he was. I was happy for him, truly happy. I was forced to confront the harsh truth. My dominance was nothing more than a facade, a fragile illusion shattered by a single small mistake. And as I picked up the pieces of my shattered ego, I realized that true power lies not in control, but in trust, communication, and mutual respect. I then realized that I had been given a second chance, a chance to start over and do things right. I was grateful for the lesson, painful as it was. I walked away from the encounter with a newfound sense of humility and gratitude. I knew that I would never again take love for granted, never again try to dominate and control. I had learned the hard way that love is a two-way street, that it requires mutual respect, trust, and love. As for me, I learned the most valuable lesson of all, that true dominance is not about exerting power over others, but about mastering oneself. And in that realization, I found a newfound sense of liberation, one that no amount of control could ever hope to achieve. So as I navigated my journey of healing, I realized that I had been living a life that was not true to myself. I had been trying to fit into a mold that society and my husband had created for me, and I had lost myself in the process. Because of money and success, I thought I was superior to others. I thought I was running the world, not knowing and realizing that I was losing myself in the process of everything. I really regret it. I wish I had done better, but hey, there is really no use crying over spilled milk, right? With the help of my therapist and my newfound self-awareness, I started to rediscover my passions and interests. I started taking art classes, joined a book club on my free days. I took them as a hobby and a source of healing. I was finally living the life I had wanted, and I felt empowered and free. As time passed, I bumped into Jake, and to my surprise, I didn't feel any sort of emotions or anything like the last time I saw him with his woman. So we greeted each other, and he asked me to join him as he was going to grab something to eat. Our conversation was solid and civil. He then told me that he was heartbroken by the separation and what had happened to our marriage, but he eventually realized that he had been just as responsible for the demise of our marriage. He had been so caught up in his career and controlling my life whenever he got a chance up until I raised and gave him a taste of his own medicine. He started therapy to work through his own issues, and I would say that he has changed for the better. I was really happy that he had finally realized that I was not the only problem in our marriage. As much as I had done the most cruel and unforgivable thing that ended our marriage, but he was actually the cause of everything. He was the root of my behavior. Yes, I should not be condoning what I had done, and I regret it every day, but the circumstances that I was facing had led me to resort to cheating and became dominant. I was not going to seek attention and affection outside our marriage if Jake was giving me enough time instead of being a control freak. I wouldn't have thought that I had to dominate him just when my businesses started making money. But despite everything that had been done, I finally managed to forgive myself and forgive Jake also. I also managed to get fair custody of my child. Yes, we had a child a year before everything changed, and that was the most refreshing and happy moment for me. Jake and I both found happiness on our own terms. One thing I vowed to embrace was getting a second chance with my child and be the best mother to him. I know that my story became a testament to the power of self-forgiveness and personal growth. I had learned that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to rise above one's mistakes and find strength in the process. Through my journey, I did not only rebuild my life, but I had also discovered a purpose far greater than I had ever imagined. Time passed, we were in contact with Mike, so we decided to force and confront our deepest fears and insecurities for the sake of our child, because the awkwardness that was happening between us was somehow getting into him. I took full responsibility for my actions, expressing remorse and pleading for forgiveness. I just need some tips and guides about life and relationships so that I wouldn't repeat the same mistakes when I decide to get into another relationship. Please help me. You know, sometimes coming from a big family comes with a price of betrayal and disloyalty. The person or the people you had thought had your back turned your back on you and betrayed you in a most cruel way. When you report the issue to the elders, they take the other person's side. I don't know if you understand me. I had brought someone from the outside who I thought would build and extend my home, but instead, she extended someone else's home, and that person was my cousin. Imagine. It's still hard talking about this. In order to heal, I have to share it and move on. As hard as it is, I have to man up and face the music, no matter how bad the tune is. Some will understand what I'm talking about, and some will catch it later. So I, M33, am naturally a quiet and reserved person. I love peace, but people take that for a ride. I got married when I was only 23 years old. I thought I had found my soulmate or the right person to share my life and grow old with, not knowing that I was actually bringing someone who would be my worst nightmare. I grew up in a village that was ruled by a king, meaning we live by rules. And if you ever do something unlawful, the king and the village people will ban you. A man had to go to the reed dance where maidens usually do their singing and traditional dancing competitions. Also to do a termly checkup if they were still pure virgins. So young and old men would attend the dance, some to watch the maidens and some to choose wives for themselves. My father was in a polygamous marriage. He had 3 wives and he chose all of them from the reed dance a long time ago. In our village, a man had to have more than 2 wives who would bear him children to expand the family surname. That tradition started way back from our great ancestors, till now it's still in operation. But nowadays, some choose maidens to use them for their selfish reasons. Some old men would choose young girls to become their wives at a young age. It's disgusting and shameful, I tell you. So I found my wife, or must I say my ex-wife, during the reed dance. My father had asked me and my brothers to go and watch it. Maybe we would get ourselves wives. Well, to tell the truth, I didn't want a wife. I was still young to have a wife. I still wanted to enjoy my young life, but if you are a boy from the villages that are ruled by kings, and your father is a king's servant, it's compulsory for us to get wives, not those city wives, but well-respected and dignified wives from the village. So there was this beautiful lady that had caught my eyes. She was a medium-sized, dark woman. She was dancing so beautifully, I was taken back, no lie. Until it was her turn to do the dance, she danced and came to my direction. I had thought she was going to choose one of my brothers. Only to see her coming straight to me, she took my hand and put on a beaded bracelet that symbolizes that she had chosen me to be her boyfriend. I was really taken back by her act. She was really amazing as she was doing her dance. A week later, we had started seeing and knowing each other on another level. She was polite and very humble. Her smile was so beautiful, and it complemented her beauty so well. I enjoyed every moment I had spent with her. Our relationship kept growing to a point that a few months later, I told my father that I was ready to take a wife. I then decided to take the next step and ask my uncles and brothers to stand in on my behalf to go to Pamela's F30 homestead to ask for her hand in marriage. After everything was done traditionally, we asked to get married in church only. Our relationship was a bliss. Well, at least that's what I had thought. Pamela was so sweet and loved people, so she got along very well with my siblings, especially my male cousin. I had thought that their friendship was pure and innocent since they were the same age. I took Pam as my wife when she had just turned 20 and she had dreams of going to university to further her studies. So I had to make a plan as her husband to make sure that she achieves her dreams and goals. That time I was working at Transnet as a transport admin clerk, so I was able to afford her fees. The following year, Pam got enrolled at Durban University of Technology, which was far away from our village. As much as I was not comfortable for her to live in the city, but she had to chase her dreams, and my cousin was also attending the same university. So I was somehow relieved that at least one of the people I trusted was there with her. I would see my wife during school holidays or when I was not working, so I had to drive to Durban to see her. Sometimes I would find her at the students' accommodation chilling with my cousin. I didn't pay much attention to that because I trusted them, thinking they would never betray me, but I guess I had to trust a stone than a human being. So 3 years passed, and Pamela graduated from university. In her first year in university, she got pregnant, and unfortunately, we lost the pregnancy. I was really heartbroken, so was Pam, but her situation was worse because she even distanced herself. She started spending more time with my cousin even when she was home. She was no longer doing her wifely duties as she was supposed to. I had thought she was grieving, but can a person grieve for the whole 3 years, and during those years, you would see her beautiful smile and loud laugh when she was with my cousin? When she was with my cousin, she would be smiling more and carefree. I once confronted them about their close friendship, but they denied my allegations, even though my conscience was telling me another story. Their coziness and the way they were free with each other raised an eyebrow. I am a person who loves doing morning runs to freshen my mind and get a good morning breeze before going to work. I once asked Pam to join me and got offended thinking I was body shaming her. I didn't understand her outburst because she allowed my cousin to call her fat when they were teasing each other. So I let her be and continued to do my runs. Sometimes I would do long runs if I wanted to clear my head. So one Sunday afternoon, I had just returned home from a long run. I walked into the living room and saw my wife and cousin sitting on the couch, laughing and chatting like they were old friends. I felt a sudden pang of unease, but I brushed it off as mere paranoia. Plus, they had told me that there was going on when I had confronted them. But as I watched them, I noticed something strange. My wife and cousin were being too familiar with each other, too touchy-feely. They were sitting too close, their legs touching, and their hands resting on each other's knees. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My suspicions got high, and I decided to investigate this issue to ease my conscience, but I was really confident that something was really going on between the two. So I decided to investigate further. I started asking questions again, pretending to be oblivious to what was going on. But my wife and cousin were too clever. They saw right through my act. They denied everything, telling me I was being paranoid and reading too much into their friendship. But I knew the truth. I could feel it in my bones. And I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. As the days passed, I became more and more obsessed with uncovering the truth. I started following my wife and cousin, watching their every move. I would wait for them not too far from their favorite spot near the river, or follow them when they were saying they were going to town. My wife would say she was accompanying my cousin to town. I was determined to catch them in the act, to see for myself what was going on. I didn't take my wife's accompanying cousin to town. During my investigation, I once took my wife's phone. I knew her password since she also knew mine. I checked her socials and found out that she had been sending my cousin her pictures wearing lingerie. More like different ones. I didn't even know that she had lingerie. There were also videos of my wife doing those seductive dances and sending them to my cousin. I was oblivious about what I saw. I got so angry to a point that I wanted to attack them both. In rural areas, the thing called divorce doesn't exist, especially if you are married traditionally. So Pam and I are tied to each other by God and ancestors. I couldn't even share the same bed as her. She had shown me that she was not the innocent and humble girl I had found or that had chosen in front of my father and siblings. She even gave me a beaded bracelet that symbolizes love, meaning I would be stuck with her till the end of time, unless if she gets married to another family, then the elders would have to consult with the ancestors, my home ancestors, to relieve and allow her to be introduced in another surname and ancestors. Before I took the matter to the adults, I confronted the wife about the videos and her conversation with my cousin. The nerve she had to just stare at me and lie on my face, but I had every proof that she was cheating, so I slapped her hard. She couldn't believe it because I was not a violent person. I respect my peace. After I slapped her, she ran out, and I was pretty sure that she was going to cry to my cousin. My cousin came to me looking deadly. He started fighting me till the fight escalated to a point that my brothers came in to stop the fight. I was furious at the fact that they both had lied to me, to my face, when I asked what was going on. The way I was so angry, I wanted to hurt someone so bad. I mean, how could this girl choose me in front of my family, then she goes and does this shameful act while married to me, with my cousin? The fact that I had trusted them when they went to university together, I thought their friendship was pure. Little did I know that I was made a fool and deceived. My brothers asked us to sit down and solve whatever issue that we had, civilly. I didn't want to solve anything. I wanted them to feel the wrath of making me a fool. The brothers asked what we were fighting about. I told them that I will tell them once I have gathered enough information about the wife of mine and dear cousin. So I became obsessed with finding hard proof, and I wanted the family to know about the snake they were keeping in our yard. I didn't want them to see only pictures and messages because they would definitely deny everything, so I planned to find them on the act. I know it was evil of me, but what would I have done? And finally, after weeks of surveillance, I got my proof. I saw them together, in a secluded spot, their arms around each other, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me, and I knew I had to do something. I took pictures of them, but they were not enough for the family to believe me. I mean, this girl was a virgin when I married her, meaning she started getting loose when I had taken her virginity. After that, she saw a great opportunity to do infidelity, not with someone from university, but she decided to do it with my cousin. The person I live with is in the same yard. That was pure disrespect, and to be taken for a ride. I wanted to show them what being taken for a ride was like. I wanted them to regret the day they first got attracted to each other. A few weeks later, they went back to university. I was obsessed with finding whatever that was going on between. I couldn't rest without finding the hard evidence, so I was able to convince the family to allow me to leave the loose cannon. I kept my wife and cousin's shameful act for a while because I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the whole family. I know some would say I have failed to rule my house and look at me as a weak man. Already I was feeling like a failure that my wife had chosen to find solace in another man's arms. What pisses me off more is that Pam didn't even bother saying anything. I mean, communication is one of the greatest keys to a successful and strong marriage and relationship. Why did she fail to communicate with me, and why did she agree to marry me knowing very well that she had some feelings for my cousin? I felt like a fool. A few months later, things were getting worse. My wife and cousin were unstoppable to a point that even the elders had noticed the relationship they had. I tried denying so that I would tell them when I have gathered much concrete evidence. So I asked one of the boys from the village who was doing IT at their university to help me plant a camera in my wife's residential room, also in my cousin's room. I couldn't even look my wife in the eyes because in front of the elders she acted like a good wife, while I knew that she was a fox on a sheep's skin. One day she came to our bedroom and asked us to talk. There was nothing I wanted to talk to her about, so I told her to go to her boyfriend's room, but she refused and caused a scene. Thanks to the fact that when we got married, we were forced to build our own house in the yard since it was big enough for plenty of houses. So when she caused a scene and started kicking things, acting like a psycho, I slapped her and she fell on the bed. She started fighting back, but I just took out my belt and whipped her with it. Did I do wrong by acting like that? I was avoiding being called an abuser or a woman beater, so that's why I opted to whip her like a child, because she was acting like one. For the whole month, she went back to university. I missed her, I missed my wife. My mind and body wanted me to drive to Durban so I could see her and maybe apologize. But what would I be apologizing for, because I was a victim in all this ordeal? My heart wanted nothing to do with her. As much as it was heartbreaking and disappointing to know that my wife was attending the same school as my cousin. Where was the bro code there? How could you sleep or even develop a relationship with your cousin's wife? It's just so disgusting and disloyal. A couple of months later, my father and the elders summoned me and Pam to a family meeting regarding the issue that we were facing. I had recently gotten the evidence I was looking for. I couldn't wait to show the family what the Virgin Mary of a wife I had and their precious son, who is my cousin, did, all in the name of we're going to study in Durban, while their study was getting on top of each other doing shameful acts. Worst part, the woman is married, so when she gets to Durban, her panties get loose and forget that she has a husband back at home. I was in so much fury. I wanted to destroy them both for making me a fool. If I was green, I would have looked like Hulk when angry. I was going crazy because I loved this girl. She was my perfect imperfection, but she was a slut. I had thought Virgin Marys were loyal and honest, but I guessed wrong. She became my worst nightmare in a few years of our marriage. Well, I found out when we were a few years into our marriage. Maybe they started sleeping together right after our wedding day. Who knows? So the family called and addressed the issue that we were facing and that there was a big elephant in the room. You wouldn't believe who that big elephant in the room is. It was me. Imagine, I was the big elephant in the room, meaning I was the one on the wrong in all of everything that my so-called wife and my cousin were doing. Their abomination made me look like a bad person. The elders kept talking and yapping about me failing to maintain my house and my wife's needs. I got really pissed off because the very same wife they were defending and telling me that I was failing was the same wife that had asked me that she had a wish to further her studies, but they couldn't afford it at her home. I took that responsibility as her husband and paid for her studies. Now I am an incompetent and failing husband. Those people were shitting on me. I'm telling you. So as they were still blubbering and exchanging words, I asked them to follow me to the lounge. There was something I needed to show them. I then asked them to call cousin, also because he was also part of the meeting, so I didn't understand why he was not in the room with us. When the cousin was called, I took out the USB that the boy I had paid gave me and put it on a TV, then pressed play. Some elders were in awe when they watched the video of my wife and cousin getting it on in Pam's student room while her roommate was out. Some were shouting at me as if I was a child, telling me to switch the thing off, while others called me heartless and selfish. Well, those who called me heartless and selfish were my cousin's parents, meaning they knew about the abomination that their son was doing with my wife. I remember hearing my cousin's mother saying I was the reason why my wife found comfort in another man's bed. It was because I was not a man enough and didn't have balls to rule and treat a woman. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to at least defend me, but they just looked at me like I had grown horns. That time the video was still playing. I was actually enjoying the show, much to the elders' annoyance, who kept telling me to switch it off. Pam was crying and kept asking that I switch off the video and fix our relationship. I don't know what was happening to me, but I got disgusted the moment she opened her slutty mouth. I switched the video off after I played it for a full 30 minutes. I called Pam's parents to join us because I didn't understand why they didn't call her parents. I mean, if it was a family meeting, both families were supposed to be present, but my family decided to deal with the issue alone and not include my wife's family. A while later, they arrived and I asked for the meeting to continue since all parties and their families were present. I then played the video again so that my in-laws would get an idea of why they were urgently called to the family meeting. Pam was busy weeping like someone had died, while my cousin looked at me like he begged for my blood. But I didn't care less because what they did to me was inhumane. No man would wish to see his wife getting banged by another man. Am I a bad person? The family meeting ended, and I had announced that I wanted to divorce Pam, but as expected, I was told that I can't divorce her because she was already a part of the family ancestrally, and I am connected to her since I was the one who took her innocence. I didn't understand that because even if she was a part of the family ancestrally, she could have still went back to her home, and I had paid for her innocence, so what they were saying was bullshit. A few weeks later, the family called another family meeting since my issue with Pamela was not resolved. Everyone was angry at how the meeting had turned. Names were exchanged, and it was a mess, and to top it all, they were blaming for my wife's infidelity. I would have understood if she had cheated with another boy from her school, but she decided to just cheat with one of my family members. The family sat me down and told me the things I didn't want to hear and I never expected. They pleaded with me to forgive my cousin and move on because what happened had happened. There was no way of changing or undoing what had happened. I couldn't believe them, so I asked if I were to forgive my cousin, what about the wife? Should I forgive her also? I couldn't accept the plea and I didn't want to because they were taking me for a ride. They didn't take my heartbreak, my dignity, and my place as the victim. I was the victim in all of the situations, so I didn't understand how they could take the side of the people who betrayed me in the most cruel and shameful way. I was not going to forgive them. Pamela's family came to fetch her a month after the meeting had taken place. They were disappointed and hurt by their daughter's act. I assured them that I would continue paying for Pam's university fees so they wouldn't worry about it, but I wanted nothing to do with her. I wanted her gone. My father came to my house a while after my in-laws had departed. He also talked me out about forgiving my family. I didn't understand, and it shocked me that my own father didn't see things in my perspectives and he didn't care about my feelings, rather the cousin's feelings and well-being. The only people I had support from were my brothers. I would never forget them for the support they had given me during my heartbreak period. About 5 months later, Pam's family came back with Pam. She was pushing a very big stomach. They came to our homestead to report Pam's pregnancy. I just didn't know how to feel about the whole thing because she had told me that she wanted to focus on her modules, so she didn't want any child. I understood her, but she had the nerve to open legs for my cousin and allow him to pull out inside her. What if the guy had a sickness or a virus, and if I didn't find out about the affair they were having, she was going to continue sleeping with me while sleeping with my cousin also. It's just disgusting. So, the family asked who the child belonged to. I thought she was going to tell the truth and there was really no need to ask who the father of the baby was. Instead, she told the family that the child was mine and she won't be able to take care of the child alone while she was still traditionally married and she wanted to come back home to her husband. I told her to take the pregnancy to its rightful owner because I was not going to take any responsibility for the pregnancy I knew nothing about. And the last time I had been intimate with her, we used a protection, her rules. And it was 9 months before, which meant if the child was mine, she would have given birth by the time she came to my house to report the pregnancy. The hate I had for her grew more and more to a point that I even hated her smell. Why would she do something like that? Was she hoping that I would acknowledge and accept her lies while she knew the truth? I was not going and willing to do such a foolish thing. She should have thought twice before coming to my house to give me the child that was not mine. That thing was not going to affect only me, but the child also, because if I had acknowledged her pregnancy and took responsibility for the child was going to get sick because my cousin and I are not using the same surnames. I still loved her very much, but I couldn't allow her to make me a fool once again. So I threw her and her family out. I didn't care if she fell and got hurt. I was in the mix of hurt and anger. My family kept pestering me about forgiving my cousin because it was not good to stay angry at a family member for too long. In everything they had said, I only noticed that they were only asking me to forgive my cousin, but not my wife. If I asked why, they never mentioned anything or asked me to forgive Pamela also, because they were both on the wrong. The answers I got were, my wife didn't show any respect for herself and the family she got married to, meaning she was the cause of the drift between my cousin and I. The unfairness and politics they had, I didn't want to involve myself in it, so I came up with the decision of forgiving none of them because both of them were the cause of the drift. Things got tense and sour at home. The family was angry at me for having a cold heart, as they had put it. It was no longer a happy and united family. Well, they assumed that I was the one who made things like how they got, because if I had not released or showed them the video and pictures of Pamela and my cousin, none of the family members would be angry at each other. My father took my cousin's side and told me that if I gave my wife time and attention, she wouldn't have fallen in another man's arms, so everything was on me. I couldn't believe my father. I mean, these two people embarrassed me and tarnished my dignity as a man and a husband. Was I not supposed to go to work so I could provide for my wife and be able to pay for her university fees? Was not a man enough by wanting and striving for what's best for my wife and our future children? Please make me understand, because I am really failing to. Time passed and I moved out from home because things were no longer the same. My father had started getting sick. My brothers said I was the cause of his sickness because of my selfishness. I was shocked when my brothers had also turned their backs on me. I mean, I didn't ask my father to take my cousin's side and not put his own child to his best interests. Instead, he joined the people who wanted to tarnish my name and forced me to forgive my cousin. I had no problem forgiving my cousin, you know? But what pissed me off more is the fact that they were treating my cousin as the victim in everything, and I was the villain. I decided to move out. Well, I got an apartment in the city, so I would be closer to work. But before I moved out, I got cursed by my aunt, cousin's mom, wishing bad luck upon me. That was pure witchcraft and evil of her. How can you curse your brother's child for your son's doings? I was so disappointed with my family, they even made me choose that I should either forgive my cousin or move out of the homestead until I have made up my mind and stop acting like a teenager. I chose to move out, not because I was childish or something, but I wanted them to consider their statements. They were all in the wrong, and I felt like they were acknowledging that the mess my cousin made along with my wife was a good thing. There were two parties in the ordeal, but they wanted me to forgive only one part. How fair is that? A couple of months later, I received a call from Pamela, asking for forgiveness and wanting to fix things. I didn't have time for her and her emotional blackmailing. During those months, Pamela's father passed on, and I was forced to go and pay my respect to the family as a husband, of course. In our culture, you are forced to attend either a funeral or any ceremony for your in-laws because you and that family are lawfully banded to each other, meaning you are one of them even if you and your husband no longer get along. Since we lived in the village that is ruled by the king, what happens in your household must stay and be solved in your household, and make sure that the family household issues do not reach the outside community. Unless if someone has done something unlawful and endangering the villagers, then the issue will be taken to the king. The king will then decide how to punish that sinner and what kind of punishment is good for them. So on the other hand, my issue was a family issue. So I had to pretend in front of the nosy villagers to be in good space with Pamela. It was really hard pretending, but it somehow felt good to be in her presence again, even though my heart was no longer beating for her. It had released her. So I played my good husband and son-in-law role for the whole weekend. It was really hard pretending. People, please don't pretend, rather be rare and real than being fake and famous. It was not nice. Pamela's baby was looking so much like my cousin, and that really added to my hard heart, because she was so sure that the child was mine, knowing very well that I was not the father. What was she hoping to achieve? Because even if the child had turned out to be mine, I wouldn't have gotten back with her, but I would have taken responsibility for my child. The following year, Pamela graduated from university. I was really happy and proud of her. I mean, she showed me that I was not paying for anything, so it made me proud that she took her modules seriously. The relationship of my cousin and Pamela continued. I guess she was not really apologizing when she came to apologize the last time. Their relationship was no longer a secret. Villagers had found out about it, and my family became the talk of the village. Truthfully, I didn't feel anything when they officialized their relationship, not even a pang of jealousy, which meant I was really over Pamela. So I called the whole family for a meeting. It had been since I had hatred and hunger for vengeance towards my cousin and Pamela, so it was time to let things be and let bygones be bygones. Not for them, but for my conscience and peace. I didn't want my family to keep hating me for something I would have long done. So during the meeting, I asked them to call Pam and my cousin. When everyone was there, I then told them that I was forgiving them and gave them my blessings to their relationship. After I had told them that, I then took the beaded bracelet that Pam had given me when she chose me and gave it back to her so she can give it to the right person since I was no longer her man. Another month passed. My cousin asked me to accompany him to ask for a hand in marriage for Pam at her homestead. I knew my cousin was somehow cheesy, but he should have known at least half of our traditions since he also grew up in the village. My father had gotten better after I had released my heart and appeased the ancestors for my behavior. So he told my cousin that Pamela was lawfully and ancestrally married to me, meaning she belonged to my family clans, so if he wanted to ask for Pam's hand in marriage, he should do that to me. I had never thought that such a facade would one day happen to me, like having to hand my wife, or must I say ex-wife, to my cousin. It was just unbelievable. I still believed that they would somehow break up and realize their wrongs. I had once asked Pam why she gave me the beaded bracelet if she wanted to be with my cousin, and what I got was she was advised by her mother that she should choose me in the reed dance because I would be able to take care of her and her family, so she had to pause her relationship with my cousin. How crazy is that? So she told me that she knew that I would be able to take her to school and build her home because I had a good-paying job and my cousin was still a student. That was why she chose to go to Durban University of Technology, so she can be able to see and be with my cousin, meaning that she used me for her own and her family's benefit. I wouldn't have been surprised if her mother also advised her to say that the child was mine, knowing very well that there was no possible way the child would have been mine. I was no longer angry or disappointed, but I was aggrieved, so she chose me because I was a meal ticket to her. I was going to be Bob the Builder in her home and be the student fund in her studies. I couldn't say anything anymore, but I was glad that she had told me the whole truth at the end. Her bride price was paid and she was officially out of my life. Did I deal with the situation in the wrong way? Please advise me.